My name is Maya Chen, and I've spent the last 7 years building a reputation at Viridian Dynamics as someone who gets things done. Quietly, efficiently, and without drama. I'm not the type to wear stilettos or drop passive-aggressive comments in the break room. I show up early, triple-check my spreadsheets, and always bring the extra coffee when the team's burning the midnight oil. I believe that if I worked hard enough, played fair, and kept my head down, the system would eventually reward me. I was wrong. It all came crashing down on a Tuesday afternoon that started like any other. Rain tapped against the office windows, the kind of gray drizzle that makes fluorescent lights feel even harsher. I was in the middle of finalizing the quarterly client presentation for our biggest account, Novatech, when my boss, Richard Holloway, summoned me to his office. His tone was clipped, his email just 3 words. Asterisk my office. Now. Asterisk. I smoothed my blazer, took a breath, and walked down the hall, heels clicking against the polished concrete floor. Richard's office was glass-walled, a fishbowl of power, and as I approached, I saw him leaning over his desk, speaking in low, urgent tones to a young man I'd only seen once before, his nephew Kyle. Kyle had been temporarily assigned to our department 3 months ago after flunking out of business school. He wore his connections like armor, never showed up before 10, and once borrowed my client notes without asking. I'd reported it to HR, but Richard had waved it off with a chuckle. Asterisk, kids will be kids, Maya. Cut him some slack. Asterisk. Now, as I stepped inside, Kyle's smirk told me everything I needed to know. Maya, Richard said without looking up. Sit down. I didn't. I have the Novatech deck ready for your review. They're expecting it by 3. This is more important, Richard said, finally meeting my eyes. There was something cold in them I hadn't seen before. Kyle's been working on a new proposal for Novatech. A fresh angle. Bold. Disruptive. My stomach dropped. The Novatech account is mine. I've managed it for 2 years. We just closed their biggest contract last quarter. Exactly, Richard said, steepling his fingers. Which is why it's time for new energy. Kyle's got ideas, real innovation. You've been reliable, Maya. But reliable isn't enough anymore. I felt the words like a slap. You're giving my account to Kyle? Not giving, Richard corrected smoothly. Transitioning. You'll support him through the handoff. Train him. Show him the ropes. Behind him, Kyle leaned back in his chair, twirling a pen like he owned the place. Don't worry, Maya. I'll make sure to credit you in the footnotes. That did it. All the sleepless nights, the missed birthdays, the times I'd swallowed my pride when Kyle accidentally took credit for my work in meetings, it surged up like a wave. You can't do this, I said, voice low but steady. Novatech trusts me. They don't even know who you are, Kyle. Kyle's smirk vanished. He shot to his feet. Watch your tone. Or what? I challenged. You'll run crying to your uncle again. That's when it happened. In one fluid, unhinged motion, Kyle snatched the heavy-duty stapler from Richard's desk, the industrial kind that binds legal pads, and swung it at me. Not a warning. Not a threat. A full, wild arc aimed at my temple. I ducked just in time. The stapler whistled past my ear and slammed into the wall with a sickening crack. Staples scattered like shrapnel across the carpet. For a heartbeat, we all froze. Richard's mouth hung open. Kyle stood panting, eyes wide with something between rage and panic. And me. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands didn't shake. Not yet. Then the door opened. Silas Thorne stood in the doorway. Novatech's CEO. The man whose trust I'd spent 2 years earning. The man whose multi-million-dollar contract was now hanging by a thread. He wore a charcoal overcoat, rain glistening on his shoulders, and his sharp eyes took in the scene in one sweeping glance. The dented wall, the scattered staples, Kyle's raised arm still half-cocked, Richard's stunned face, and me, standing there, breathing hard, my blazer askew. Silas didn't say a word. He just stepped inside, closed the door softly behind him, and folded his arms. The silence was louder than the stapler. Richard recovered first. Silas, what a surprise. We weren't expecting you until Thursday. He forced a laugh, too high, too fast. Just a little team-building exercise. You know how passionate we get about our work. Kyle dropped the stapler like it burned him. Yeah, totally. Just, demonstrating a new stress relief technique. I almost laughed. Almost. But Silas wasn't looking at them. He was looking at me. His gaze was steady, unreadable. And in that moment, I saw it, the flicker of disappointment. Not anger. Worse. Disappointment. Like he'd expected better from me. From us. I wanted to explain. To scream that I was the victim here. That Kyle was a spoiled brat who just tried to brain me with office supplies. but the word stuck in my throat. Because what would it sound like? An excuse. A sob story. In this world, perception is everything, and right now we look like a circus. Silas finally spoke, his voice quiet but cutting through the room like a blade. I came early because I wanted to discuss the future of our partnership. In person. He paused, eyes flicking to Kyle, then back to me. It seems I arrived at the perfect time. Richard jumped in. Absolutely. Kyle's been leading the new strategy. Brilliant young mind. Maya's been mentoring him. Maya, Silas interrupted, still looking at me. Is that true? All eyes turned to me. Richard's were pleading. Kyle's were narrowed, daring me to contradict him. And Silas was waiting. I could play along. Swallow my pride one more time. Nod, smile, and let Kyle steal my life's work. It would be easier. Safer. But something inside me snapped. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just a quiet, final click, like a lock turning. No, I said, my voice clear and calm. It's not true. Richard's face went pale. Kyle took a step forward, but Silas held up a hand without even looking at him. Go on, Silas said. I took a breath. Kyle has never met with Novatech. He's never reviewed a single contract, attended a strategy call, or even read the client briefs. I've managed this account alone since day one. And just now, I gestured to the stapler on the floor. He attacked me because I refused to let him take credit for my work. Kyle sputtered. That's not. She's lying. She came at me first. Did she? Silas asked, turning to him. His tone was mild, but his eyes were ice. Richard jumped in again, sweating now. Silas, please. This is a misunderstanding. Kyle's under a lot of pressure. Maya's just stressed. We'll handle this internally. Internally? Silas repeated. He walked slowly to the center of the room, picked up the stapler, and weighed it in his hand. This is how you handle conflict at Viridian? With violence. He set it down gently on Richard's desk. I didn't build Novatech by tolerating chaos. Or liars. Richard opened his mouth, but Silas wasn't done. I came here today to offer Viridian a 5-year extension, he said, his voice dropping. With a 40% increase in scope. It would have been the largest deal in your company's history. He looked at me. I was going to insist you lead it, Maya. I told my board you were the only reason we stayed. My breath caught. But now, he shook his head slowly. I don't know who to trust in this room. The weight of those words pressed down on me. This wasn't just about my career. It was about everything I'd built. My integrity. My reputation. The quiet dignity I'd clung to while others played politics. And in one stupid, violent moment, Kyle had nearly destroyed it all. Silas turned to leave. I'll be in the lobby. I suggest you decide quickly who actually runs this account and who belongs in a courtroom. The door clicked shut behind him. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Richard rounded on Kyle, voice low and furious. What the hell were you thinking? You could have killed her. Kyle's bravado crumbled. She was humiliating me. In front of him. You think that matters now? Richard hissed. Novatech is walking out the door because of you. I should have felt vindicated, relieved. But all I felt was hollow. Because even if Silas believed me, even if Richard fired Kyle on the spot, the damage was done. The trust was broken. And in this industry, trust is the only currency that matters. I straightened my blazer, smoothed my hair, and walked to the door. Where are you going? Richard demanded. To fix this, I said. Maya, wait. But I was already out the door, heels clicking down the hall toward the lobby, toward Silas Thorne, toward the wreckage of everything I'd worked for. The rain had stopped. Weak sunlight filtered through the clouds, glinting off the wet pavement outside. Silas stood by the reception desk, staring out the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. I stopped a few feet away. Mr. Thorne. He turned. His expression was unreadable. I know what this looks like, I said, keeping my voice steady. And I know I can't undo it. But I can tell you the truth. All of it. He studied me for a long moment. Then he nodded toward the empty conference room across the hall. Talk. I followed him inside, my mind racing. This was my only shot. Not just to save the account, but to prove that I wasn't just another casualty of office politics. That I was more than the quiet woman who kept her head down. As I sat across from him, the words began to flow about the late nights, the client calls at 2 a.m., the way Kyle had undermined me at every turn, the moment the stapler flew through the air. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I just laid it out, fact by fact, like the reports I'd spent years perfecting. Silas listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers, just like Richard had. But where Richard's gesture had felt smug, Silas's felt thoughtful. You're good, he said finally. Better than good. But talent isn't enough in this game, Maya. You need backbone. And today you showed me yours. I held my breath. He stood, straightening his coat. I'm not signing anything today. But I'm not walking away either. He paused at the door. Fix this mess. And if you do, we'll talk. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the quiet conference room, the echo of his words hanging in the air. Fix this mess. I looked down at my hands. They were still steady. Outside, the city hummed with traffic, with possibility. Somewhere in this building, Kyle was probably whining to his uncle. Richard was likely scrambling to save face. And me. I had work to do. Because I wasn't just going to fix this. I was going to make sure no one ever doubted me again. I didn't go back to my desk. Not yet. Instead, I walked straight to HR, past the hushed cubicles, past the break room where someone had left a half-eaten donut on a napkin, past the glass-walled conference rooms where junior analysts were pitching ideas no one would remember by lunch. My pulse was steady now, not from calm, but from clarity. HR was empty except for Marla, the department head, who looked up from her screen like she'd been expecting me. Her expression wasn't surprised, just tired. Maya, she said, sighing. I heard. Did you see the security footage? I asked, cutting straight to it. She hesitated. It's being reviewed. Reviewed? I stepped closer. Kyle assaulted me with a weapon in a corporate office. A client witnessed it. And you're reviewing. Marla's shoulders slumped. Richard's already called corporate legal. They're advising us to treat this as an internal personnel matter until further notice. Until Silas Thorne cancels our contract. I said, voice low. Until the news leaks that Viridian lets nepotism turn violent. She looked away. I leaned forward, palms flat on her desk. I want a formal incident report. Today. I want Kyle suspended pending investigation. And I want every email, every meeting note, every client call log from the past 2 years pulled and timestamped. So there's no question who ran Novatech. Marla blinked. That's a lot. It's the bare minimum, I said. And if you don't do it, I'll file a police report for assault and send the footage to every tech blog that's ever covered Novatech. Her eyes widened. You wouldn't. Try me. For the first time, I saw real fear in her face, not of me, but of what happened if this blew up. Viridian wasn't just any firm. It was mid-tier, hungry, always one misstep from being swallowed by the giants. A scandal like this, it could sink us. She nodded slowly. I'll start the report now. Good. I turned to leave, then paused. And Marla, don't let Richard pressure you. Silas Thorne is waiting in the lobby. He's not leaving until he sees action. I walked out before she could respond. Back at my desk, I didn't sit. I powered up my laptop, plugged in my external drive, and began copying everything. Every strategy doc, every client email chain, every performance metric tied to Novatech. If this turned into a war, I'd need ammunition. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You're dead to this company. K. I deleted it without replying. 10 minutes later, Richard appeared at my cubicle, face flushed, tie crooked. Maya, we need to talk. About how you let your nephew attack me? I didn't look up from my screen. About damage control, he snapped. Silas is still here. He wants to see the original Novatech pitch deck, the one from 2022. The one you presented. I finally met his eyes. Why? Because he said if it matches your version of events, he might reconsider. Richard ran a hand through his thinning hair. Look, Maya, I messed up. I thought Kyle just needed a chance. But this is insane. Then fire him. I can't just. Why not? I cut in. Because he's family? Because you're embarrassed? Or because you're scared of what happens when the board finds out you handed a $20 million account to a college dropout who flunked accounting? Richard flinched. I stood, closing my laptop. Get me the deck. And while you're at it, draft Kyle's termination letter. Effective immediately. If you don't, I'll walk out that door with every file I've ever created for Novatech. And Silas will know exactly why. He stared at me like he'd never seen me before. Maybe he hadn't. Maybe he'd only ever seen the quiet woman who brought coffee and fixed his typos. But that woman was gone. He nodded stiffly and walked away. I spent the next hour compiling a timeline. Every time Kyle had tried to insert himself into the account, every email where I'd CC'd Richard to document my work, every client compliment that mentioned me by name. I printed it all, stapled it neatly, ironically, with a small desktop stapler, and placed it in a manila folder labeled Novatech Truth. Then I walked to the lobby. Silas was still there, scrolling on his phone, but he looked up the moment I entered. Without a word, I handed him the folder. He opened it, flipped through the pages slowly. His expression didn't change, but his fingers lingered on a note from Novatech's CTO. Maya's insights saved us 6 figures in Q3. She's the only vendor who actually listens. He closed the folder. You didn't have to do this. Yes, I did, I said. Because if I let this go, it means people like Kyle win. It means hard work doesn't matter. And I can't live in a world like that. Silas studied me for a long moment. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black USB drive. This contains the full terms of the 5-year extension. With your name as lead. My breath caught. But you said you weren't signing anything today. I lied, he said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. I needed to see if you'd fight. And you didn't just fight, you built a case. That's leadership. He handed me the drive. But this isn't yours yet. Not officially. I frowned. What do you mean? The contract requires Viridian's CEO to sign off. And from what I hear, Richard doesn't have that authority anymore. Before I could ask what he meant, the elevator dinged. Out stepped a woman in a tailored navy suit, silver hair pulled into a sharp bun, eyes scanning the lobby like a hawk. Behind her, 2 men in dark suits carried briefcases. Viridian's CEO, Eleanor Voss. I'd only seen her once, at the annual gala, where she'd given a 10-minute speech and vanished. She didn't do mid-level drama. Yet here she was. She walked straight to Silas, shook his hand firmly. Silas, thank you for your patience. Then she turned to me. You must be Maya Chun. I nodded, suddenly aware of how rumpled my blazer was, how my hair had come loose from its clip. I've reviewed the security footage, she said, voice crisp. And Kyle Holloway has been escorted off the premises. Richard is on administrative leave pending a full ethics investigation. She paused. You've been named interim head of strategic accounts. I blinked. What? You heard me, she said. You protected a key client under extreme duress. You documented your work meticulously. And you refused to let fear silence you. She glanced at Silas. Qualities we've been missing in leadership. Silas nodded. She's the real deal, Eleanor. Eleanor turned back to me. The Novatech extension is yours to finalize, if you still want it. Did I? A week ago, I would have said yes without hesitation. But now, I looked at the USB drive in my hand, then at the glass doors of Viridian, where my reflection looked back, tired, bruised, but standing tall. I have conditions, I said. Eleanor raised an eyebrow. Name them. First, Kyle is banned from all Viridian properties permanently. Second, HR overhauls its nepotism policy, no more family hires without board approval. Third, I took a breath. I want a seat at the leadership table. Not as a figurehead, as a decision maker. Silas smiled faintly. Eleanor didn't blink. Done, she said. Just like that. But as I followed her toward the executive wing, something nagged at me. This felt too clean. Too fast. Kyle wouldn't go quietly. Richard had friends in high places. And Viridian's board. They love stability, not shakeups. Still, for the first time in years, I felt seen. We reached the conference room where the final contract would be signed. The table gleamed under recessed lighting. Champagne chilled in a bucket. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Then my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time a photo. It was a screenshot of an email sent from my work account an hour ago. Subject line, confidential, Novatech concerns. The body read, Silas Thorne is pushing for unrealistic deliverables. We may need to renegotiate or walk away. It was signed with my name. My blood ran cold, because I hadn't sent that. And if Silas saw it, I looked up just as he entered the room, holding a printed copy of the email, his face unreadable. Maya, he said quietly. Care to explain? Behind him, Eleanor frowned. What's this? I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, the conference room door swung open. Kyle stood there, smirking, holding a tablet. Surprise, he said. Turns out, while you were playing hero, I was playing chess. He tapped the screen, and every monitor in the room lit up with more fake emails, dozens of them, all from me, all undermining Novatech, all timestamped within the last 24 hours. My stomach dropped, because this wasn't over. It had just begun.